If you're the parent of a toddler or preschooler, you've probably heard the term redirection once or twice. But what exactly is redirection? And is it something that we should even be doing? We're going to talk about that in today's video. Let's get to it. Okay, so I had a comment from a follower who said, I hear redirection all the time, but I don't know what exactly is it? How am I supposed to be doing it? When should I be doing it? What does that even look like? So I thought I would do a quick little video on this because there might be others out there that have the same question. Redirection is a discipline strategy that's designed to try to diffuse emotional situations by trying to take the child's attention and avert it in a different direction. Now, this strategy has been around for years, and while it can be a handy tool to have in your parenting toolbox to pull out maybe every now and then, it's not a great tool to specifically rely on all the time. And the reason for that is it doesn't really provide a lot of learning opportunities for little ones, and I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. And it oftentimes, in my experience, ends up leading parents down the pathway of doing more kind of positive reinforcement activities for a negative behavior, or even bribing, neither of which have the outcomes that we want for our children. Anytime we're doing strategies with our kids, they need to be based in how can this help my child learn to maybe have better problem-solving skills, make better choices for themselves, or learn how to regulate those big emotions. So that should always be the goal in any of our parenting strategies. So let's talk a little bit more about when redirection might be okay. For me personally, I think the use of redirection is somewhat situational, and I think it oftentimes has more to do with us as parents and what we have going on than it does with our kids. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the goal should always be teaching. But as a parent myself, and as somebody who's worked with parents for 25 years, I know that sometimes we don't have the energy to do it in that moment, we don't have the time to do it in that moment, or we don't have the opportunity to do it in that moment. I think redirection works best when we use it as a proactive strategy. So let me give an example. I'm taking my child to the park for a walk to wear off some energy before we go to a doctor's appointment, which are always a rough visit for them anyhow. So we're in the park, we're walking along, somebody's walking towards us down the way, and I see that they have a dog. I know my child is going to want to pet that dog, and I know I'm going to have to tell them no because we're going to be running behind otherwise. So in that situation, I'm going to use redirection and try to get them over here to go look at the ducks while that dog passes by, so I can hopefully avoid the whole meltdown, keeping us on track and in a happy mood before we go to the doctor's office. So that's an example of how using redirection can be a proactive way to avoid a meltdown or a tantrum. Another example could be that when we actually get to the doctor's office and they have to give my little one a shot, that maybe I pull out some bubbles to try to distract them from that shot that the doctor is giving them in that moment, because otherwise they're thrashing and the doctor can't do their job. So blowing some bubbles, singing some song to get them to focus on me and a happy activity rather than that pinprick that they're going to be feeling momentarily is another opportunity for where you might want to use redirection. But now, having said that, after the fact, we definitely want to, when our child is in a good mood and as they continue to grow, learn, and understand, have conversations about how brave they were with that shot and how, boy, those bubbles were so much fun. It made you hardly even notice that that shot was there. If you want me to bring the bubbles every time you need to get a shot, I'm happy to do that. Or how that shot really wasn't that bad. It only hurt for just a little minute, and it helps keep us healthy. So you definitely want to provide that narrative for your child depending on their age and their understanding. Okay, and then finally, the last situation where I think redirection can come in handy is when we have a little one who has a sensory need. Now, I have a whole video on that. I'll try to put the link at the end of this video on sensory activities and sensory seeking in young children. But in this example, you have a little one who is climbing all over the place. They're climbing on the counter, they're climbing on the chair, they're climbing everywhere. And you don't want them to do that. It's unsafe. You're afraid they're going to fall and get hurt. So in that situation, we're going to redirect them to something that they can climb on, understanding that that climbing is an indication of a need. Their brain is saying, go, 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 go. We can't just tell them to stop because their brain is going to say, I don't care what you're saying. I need him to move. So in that situation, when they're climbing on the counter, we're going to move them off of the counter to whatever appropriate activity we've identified. A lot of times in this situation, I would suggest parents have like a plastic slide, a little tight slide in their living room. When their little one's climbing on things they don't want them to climb on, moving them over and redirecting them, and using a physical redirect as you're moving them over there, saying, you may feel free to climb on your slide, and then up, 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 1, 2, 3, go, and keep it really fun and lighthearted. So that is another example of when redirection can be okay for our little ones, when we're trying to keep them safe and providing them with another alternative. So now let's talk about a couple of situations where I do not recommend using redirection. I do not recommend using redirection when your little one is already in the midst of a meltdown or a tantrum. If you've watched my video on meltdowns and tantrums, then you'll remember that when our brains are flooded with emotions and frustration or feeling unsafe or unseen or unheard or unloved, all thinking and listening is out the window. So if we're trying to redirect our child in the middle of those emotions, we're actually kind of sending a message that those emotions are not acceptable and you shouldn't be feeling them. What we want to do instead is be working on helping them to learn how to emotionally regulate. And that's where we need to use the calm, connect, correct/redirect system. So first we need to calm the child, and that might be through the use of a calm down zone, squishy pillows, maybe sitting on your lap if they're not hitting and biting and doing all of those kinds of things, being that soft space for them to be, taking everything down so that we're not overwhelming an already overwhelmed sensory system. So getting them calm, providing connection so that they know that they're loved and seen and heard and that it's okay for them to have those big emotions, okay? Once you've done the calm and the connect and they've started to calm themselves down and they're feeling safe, then we either do correct or redirect. So that is going to depend on the situation, at least for me personally. If I've got a little one who had all of that big stuff going on and they threw a car across the room, then I might not be so worried about it. It didn't break anything. It didn't break the car. It didn't hurt the walls. It didn't damage anything. It just kind of flew 4 or 5 feet. In that situation, once I've calmed and connected, then I might just try redirecting. Hey, what do you want to go do, buddy? Do you want to go play outside? Do you want to do some Play-Doh? You let me know what you want to do and let it be child-driven. Now, if the behavior was a red zone behavior, which is the second time that I would not use redirection, and a red zone behavior is biting, kicking, hitting, anything aggressive that hurts somebody, throwing something that damages or breaks something. Those are all things that have to be addressed, and we need to educate our children to help them learn to make better choices in the future. So if the behavior after the calm and the connect was one of those, then once my child is calm and happy and back to being regulated and relaxed, I might try, after connecting, going and doing a sensory activity to continue to try to calm their systems down. And then maybe during that sensory play, have that conversation with them about what happened. Hey, you got really angry when mom said that you couldn't go outside and you threw the truck right at mommy and hit her in the leg, and that really hurt. It's not safe to throw things at people. Maybe you should give mommy a hug and say you're sorry, right? That's the opportunity to do the education. And you want to provide the narration to help them understand you had this emotion, it made your body feel like this, and as a result, you did this. And then letting them know that's not an okay thing to do. If you're mad, you can come and see mommy and we can talk about it. Or let's talk about other things you can do when you're mad. Or safe things that you can throw, like some socks filled with rice or beans. Okay, so calm, connect, correct/redirect. So no using redirection during tantrums, meltdowns, or when it involves red zone behaviors. So here are a couple of tips and reminders before we wrap this up. The first one being that we always want to make sure that our interventions and strategies are designed to help facilitate learning for our children, learning to make better choices for themselves, learning how to regulate those big emotions. The second tip is to catch them while they're being good. Positive reinforcement is a powerful thing. And it can be a real challenge with our young children because it feels like we're always saying, no, don't, stop, and telling them what not to be doing. So when you catch them doing something that you'd like to see, you need to make sure that you comment on it. I always tell parents, give more energy to what you want and less energy to what you don't want. And next, speaking of no, don't, and stop, you want to try to use statements that avoid those trigger words for young kids. Now, this can be a challenge and it takes time and practice, but it can definitely pay off. So I love telling kids what they can do instead of what they can't. So instead of don't color on the wall, we can say, you can use your crayons on the paper. Instead of don't jump on the couch, we can say, you can jump on the trampoline or on the floor. So you're telling them what the expectation is instead of what you don't want. And we get a lot more compliance from kids when we do that. And my last tip is to be proactive. If you know that there are areas that your child struggles with, then do some practice sessions on it. If transitions off of the playground back to the car are difficult, then figure out what are some things that I can do to help with that transitions. And I have a whole video on that as well. But you want to be proactive and figure out what are some things that I can do to help them with this area where they have those meltdowns and tantrums or triggers so that we can try to facilitate learning and growth in that area. Okay, that's it. I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, I'd appreciate a boop on that like button. It helps me get my information out in front of other parents who are looking for parenting tips, strategies, and information. And if you have any questions or topics that you would like me to cover, click the link in the description below and send me your questions. I'm happy to cover them here on my channel. That's it for this time. Until next time, you guys.